Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the Emberwind tabletop role-playing game. This is my review of the Emberwind tabletop role-playing game. To be specific, let me explain exactly what type of product I'm reviewing. I received as a gift for my birthday. My wife purchased it for me. Emberwind, the tabletop role-playing game. Specifically, I have the physical product, the physical game, the physical book called the Hero's Manual. And with the Hero's Manual, you have every single thing you need to play a full game of the tabletop role-playing game of Emberwind. Okay, it's really fantastic game. I absolutely love this game. It is really, really incredibly good. I really, really like this game a lot. By the way, 5 out of 5 stars for this game. I do want to say our purchase was a bundle, so I got the digital copy day one, and then I had to wait for my physical book to arrive. That cost $50 together. So in order to have both the physical copy of the book and the digital copy of the book, it cost me $50. It is expensive because that's $50 for a book that's not even hardback bound, okay? Now let's talk about the physical book. It is absolutely gorgeous. The art in this game is stunning. It's one of the most beautiful art books I've ever seen. It's really, really unique. The art in both the print and the physical are the same. It really is massively gorgeous book. It is not hardbound. It is softbound. It's full color every single page. What it really reminds me of is a super high-end magazine, right? Also, one thing that's really interesting about this product is it is landscape orientation. That is a very, very big deal. All right, so this book is the same size as a traditional tabletop role-playing game. It's exactly the same size as a PHP, but it's landscape, it's not portrait. All Dungeons & Dragons hardback books that are being released right now are portrait. That is a problem, right? The reason why is the vast majority of games are online right now, and the vast majority of monitors are landscape portrait. And so this is a major issue that only the most top high-end, really forward-thinking tabletop role-playing game designers are really thinking about. And that is, do we transition this to be are we thinking about where this game is actually going to be played or where we would like it to be played, right? Because the vast majority of tabletop role-playing games are being played on laptops, landscape orientation, are being played on desktops, landscape orientation for the vast majority of monitors. And so this game was designed from the ground up for the optimum play view style for laptops and monitors. That is a big deal. That is forward-thinking design. That is showing you that these tabletop role-playing game designers are way ahead of the market. I was delighted to see this, and Emberwind is really fantastic from this perspective, okay? The book is really gorgeous, but it is not cheap. It did cost me $50. I think this is made by a French company. It's definitely an international tabletop role-playing game. It is not an American domestic. You should be aware of that. There's nothing, actually, sometimes I will buy international games and I'll be like, whoa, there's some cultural stuff in here that you would not, see from an American designer. This is an international game. It looks like an international game, but there are no cultural surprises if you're an American tabletop role-playing game players. There's not anything that really whoa, that's kind of strange. I read Modifius books, and as an American, their European perspectives are a little shocking sometimes. There's none of that here, right? These are clearly international producers. I think they're French. The game's completely in English, but there are no cultural bumps in the road with this game, which I appreciate. It's nice to see quirky stuff, but it's kind of weird when you get a tabletop role-playing game and you're going to have to explain things to some of your players, and it's a whole thing, right? So that's where we're at, right? So this is an excellent game. It's really, really well done from a physical book perspective and the digital book perspective. It's really good, but it is expensive. Just be aware of that. I will say it's worth every penny. I'm very, very pleased. So I paid $50 out. I really feel like I got more value than what I paid. That's good. All right. 5 out of 5 star game, from at the overall macro level. Okay. All right. Let me talk about the rules of the game. So this game is actually, you know what? Let's talk about the world. The world is very generic. It is specifically designed so that you can pick up this world and all the major, groupings, your rogue, your cleric, your wizard, and your fighter are all there, but they all have different names, right? In fact, the game is split up into 3 groupings. It's split up into commanders, harbingers, and soldiers from the class perspective. So the harbingers, let me see if I can remember all 9. So basically the harbingers, those are your magical users. There's the ardent, there's the invoker, and there's one more in the middle there. I'm not remembering that one in the middle of the harbingers, but I will tell you the commanders. You have a tactician. You have the tactician. You have the ardent, which is a really, really interesting class, and you have the and you have the I do remember the other harbinger is the druid. So there's the druid is another harbinger. And on the commander side, you have the tactician, you have the ardent, and then why am I always misremembering the? I'm forgetting the middle class. But there's one more commander class. And I'll jump over to the soldier grouping. There are warrior, archer, and rogue. Okay. Let me see one more time if I can remember the commander. So you do have the tactician, you have the, spiritualist. The spiritualist is also a commander. So that's all 9, right? So from the commander class, you have the from the commander class, you do have the spiritualist, you have the tactician, and you have the ardent. And that's all within the commander grouping. Within the invoker grouping, you have the druid, you have the, I'm sorry, for the commander, I'm sorry. Commanders, I think I got that wrong. It's the ardent, it's the spiritualist, and it's the tactician. All right? For the, specifically for the harbinger, it is the invoker, it is, and then, the names really do not map really well, and it is hard to remember what the game is actually using these for. The game does an absolutely splendid job of showing that to you very firsthand, and each class has its own gorgeous full page picture, and it gives all their attributes, their different moves and abilities, and the game is absolutely stunning when it comes to layout, when it comes to how color is used, when it comes to how symbols are used. Emberwind is truly unique. It is really, I would say, at a macro level, if you really want to understand what Emberwind is, it's a tabletop role-playing game from 5 years in the future. It's way ahead in layout. It's way ahead in class design. It's way ahead in visual style, in consistency, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. The book is gorgeous. The design is extremely well executed. The game is very, very concise, tight. It is really, really solid. I love that. Oh, and all right, let me try one more time to get these classes right. I appreciate your patience. Commanders, you have the Atlanta. Okay? Next, with the commanders, you have the Atlanta, you have the spiritualist, and you have the tactician. Okay? Those are all commanders. All right? Next, you have the harbinger. These are like, oh, and by the way, all of those commanders, those are, people who are controlling others on a battlefield or in a battle situation. Okay, they give direction. They're boosters. They're buffers. They're guiders. They're coaches. They're mentors. A very, very interesting grouping of class, right? So from that perspective, it is the Atlanta, the Spiritualist, and the Tactician. The Harbinger are all magic users. And so here you're looking at the Ardent. The Ardent is what would map most closely to a wizard, okay? Your Druid, that's your shapeshifter, okay? Very magical type. And last is the Invoker. The Invoker is very close to a sorcerer. But the reality is these are very unique. They are their own classes, and while they do map to traditional Dungeons & Dragons classes, it's better. It's just better. It's tight. The design is super unique, super tight. This is a solid game, okay? So those are the Harbingers. The Soldiers, these are very straightforward, very simple characters to play comparatively. They're more comparatively simple, okay? So let's talk about them. What are these comparatively what are the Soldiers? Well, the Soldiers are straightforward. You have the Archer. I love that the Archer is just treated as its own class, right? Because it is a range class. It's very powerful. It's very dangerous type. And it's saying, hey, if you're really good at bows, if that's your thing, that is a class, right? So it treats Archer as a class. Then you have Warrior. Now, a Warrior can use a bow, but not in the way that an Archer can, right? For them, it's just a weapon. For an Archer, the bow is a way of life. I love that the game splits this out and treats it the way it does. It is really, man, it's done so well. The last one is the Rogue. And the Rogue it's bog standard Dungeons & Dragons Rogue, right? Like, stealth, sleight of hand, all the traditional Rogue aspects, right? So that's it. That's your 9 classes. The game has 9 classes. One thing I want to note, the game does not in any way acknowledge heritage, ancestry, lineage, all those things that Dungeons & Dragons still calls race, right? It doesn't deal with it in any way, and every single person shown in the game, is shown in the art, right, is human, right? So just be aware of that. I don't think that's an issue. Most games are stripping out differences from heritage anyway. Heritage is a flavor. Heritage is a spice. It really doesn't define your character that much. It really, the idea that, a dwarf can't be this class or an elf can't be this class, those are gone for most tabletop role-playing games. And I think it's really kind of interesting that Emberwind is like, let's keep this book tight. By the way, this book comes in at about 120 pages. It is tight as a drum. There is no wasted space in this game. It's all design, all crunch. There's actually very little world building in the Hero's Manual. But what that does is it steps out of the way of a smart tabletop role-playing game designer, and you're going to bring your own world, right? High fantasy, low fantasy, any and all of those can be played with this. Now, there is very, very distinct world aspects from the moves and the abilities that these classes have. And they all and the game from a world perspective, let's talk about the world of Emberwind. It's essentially like a multicultural look at a fantasy world. By the way, very woke art, lots of good gender mix, good people of different skin colors, right? Like diversity was in mind when this game was made, right? Very, very, very well handled. In fact, let's talk about that aspect of the game. You know what? I'm going to keep going. I'll stay focused on. There's so much to talk about here. So let's keep moving. All right. Basically, you have all of that. So you have all these classes. There are no heritages. There are no ancestries. There are no lineages. It is assumed that everyone in the game is a bog standard human. Okay, which is a little refreshing, and any dungeon master worth their salt is going to be able to pop in. If you want to add dwarves or elves to your game, that's 15 minutes of work before the game starts. It's really very, very minimal prep and very tight. No worries. Should not be an issue at all. The way the game deals with equipment is the best way I've ever seen. I've seen this before in other tabletop role-playing games, and when you create your character, they're like, hey, pick a ranged weapon, pick a melee weapon, pick some armor. Done. Right? Like, there's none of this nonsense in this game of like, do you have a candle? Do you have a rope? Like, it just forgets all that, right? it takes the equipment down to the essentials. You know, what's your armor, what's your weapon, what's your armor, what's your range, what's your melee weapon, what's your ranged weapon, right? And if you want to get fancy, you know, dual wielding and all, it's all in there. It's all in there. You're not gonna lose any granularity there. This is a very crunchy game. There's a lot of tactics in this. This game does use grid, right? It is not theater of the mind. This is, you know, my character's going to move 15 feet, attack, and then move another 15 feet. But it is done in a much more elegant way than Dungeons and Dragons. It's much more mechanical. It's much more stylized, I would say. It's just really well done. And I'm highly impressed with how this game handles all of those aspects. So that is in it. So just be aware, this is almost like a tactical board game, right? From that perspective. But there's a lot of focus on there's a lot of narrative focus. There are sections in this 125 page game that talks about how to dungeon master, how to be a good player, how to tell compelling stories. This game really is showing a really beautiful path on how to keep your game incredibly tactical, incredibly focused on moves and damage and precision and accuracy, and at the same time be telling really cool tales with this. Anyone who has played Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and wants to see that game done with, it's very much like Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but with much better tactical combat options, much better art consistency, right? Much better conciseness, much better succinctness, right? This is masterfully executed. Emberwind is truly a 5 out of 5 star game. It is absolutely fantastic. I cannot recommend highly enough for you to get Emberwind. Check it out. Get it today. Worth every penny. J. Scott Garibay 100% is down with Emberwind. You should check it out for yourself. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.